At 4:41 in the morning, the airfield belonged to lights, fog, and engines not yet awake. The regional airport outside Fairview was never fully asleep, but there were hours when it came close. Before the first commuter departures, before rental counters raised their shutters, before the security lines formed, and the coffee kiosks began burning milk and optimism in equal measure, the place felt stripped down to geometry and procedure. Runway edge lights held their patient rows in the dark. Taxiway signs glowed low and color-coded against the damp. The perimeter fence stretched for miles around grass, concrete, and restricted ground that looked flat and simple from a distance and became a maze of zones, access lanes, and dead angles the moment you had to search it. The maintenance hangars sat on the east side near the service road, behind a gate most passengers never noticed. That was where the airport's practical life lived. Fuel trucks, baggage tugs, ground power carts, tow bars, tire racks, air stairs, hydraulic smell, coffee and stained thermoses, radios clipped to belts, the things that kept flight elegant from the customer side by being ugly, loud, and competent on the other side. Ruben Salazar had been an airfield mechanic for 19 years, and he trusted routine the way some men trusted scripture. At 48, he knew the rhythm of the early shift down to the minute. Gate chain off at 4:30, service truck warm-up by 4:34. Run a visual on the tug fleet before dispatching any unit to the first wave. Check the frost on the GPU connectors when the temperature dipped. Verify floodlights in Bay 3 because electrical had still not fixed the intermittent blink over the north tool wall. It was a job that rewarded attention and punished laziness, which meant Ruben fit it perfectly. That morning, he came out of the maintenance shed carrying a flashlight and a coffee that was too hot to drink properly, turned toward the perimeter service lane, and saw the Bobcat. It was sitting directly beside the airport fence, not in the brush beyond the security road, not crossing the lane in a quick, wild blur before vanishing into the drainage ditch. It was just there, still as a marker post, body turned toward the tarmac beyond the chain link where the runway lights stretched into fog. Ruben stopped walking. At first, in the weak bluish spill from the service mast lights, he thought it might be a loose dog. Then the head turned, and the face resolved into tufted ears, short tail, lean shoulders, spotted tawny coat. A bobcat by the airport fence, before dawn. Well, he muttered softly, that's not standard equipment. The bobcat looked at him once, then back through the fence. That was the first thing that felt wrong. The second was that it didn't run. Wildlife near the perimeter wasn't unheard of. Rabbits got through storm culverts. Foxes cut across the outer grass after midnight. Deer occasionally turned into 6 hours of operations headaches if they breached the fence line near the south approach. Airfield crews talked about animals the same way sailors talked about weather, as recurring irritations with the power to become disasters. But those animals usually moved with fear or purpose. This bobcat was doing neither. It was waiting. Ruben took 3 slow steps closer. The bobcat rose immediately, padded 20 feet along the fence, and stopped again near the old service gate spur by Runway 2's approach lights. Then it sat. It hadn't retreated from him. It had repositioned. Toward something. That pulled a line of cold through Ruben's chest. The far side of that fence was restricted operations ground. Gravel shoulder, drainage swale, a strip of rough grass, then the paved edge of the service road that ran parallel to the runway approach lighting. Beyond that, the runway environment itself. Lights, signs. No place for anything or anyone who didn't belong there. He keyed his shoulder radio. Ops, this is Salazar on East Perimeter. I've got wildlife near the fence by the Runway 2 light field. Ops came back sleepy and automatic. Type? Ruben kept his eyes on the animal. Bobcat. A pause, then. Repeat? Bobcat. Another pause. Longer this time. Then the duty supervisor's voice joined the channel. Any breach? Negative breach. Fence looks intact from here, but the animal's not moving off. That sentence changed its meaning as he said it, because now he could see what had pulled it. Something dark lay in the gravel beyond the fence inside the restricted side, not far from the first row of runway edge lights. At first it looked like wind-blown trash. Then the dawn shifted just enough. A backpack, child-sized, blue with one reflective strap catching the field light. Reuben felt every muscle in his body tighten. There are certain objects that do not belong near runway lights. A child's backpack is high on that list. "Ops," he said, voice suddenly flat and very clear. "I've got a backpack inside the perimeter near runway 2 east fence." The reply came back sharper immediately. "Are you serious?" "Yes." The bobcat rose again and moved to the exact section of fence opposite the backpack. It looked down toward the gravel, then beyond it toward the approach lights. Not random, not even slightly. Reuben set his coffee down on the service curb and crouched near the chain link, angling his flashlight through the fence. The beam struck wet gravel, grass, the backpack, and then what he had not yet allowed himself to imagine. A little shoe, pink sole, mud-streaked, lying on its side near the nearest approach light footing. He went cold all at once. "Shut down vehicle movement on the east service lane now," he snapped into the radio, "and get airport police here." The supervisor didn't ask a single dumb question after that. That was the mercy of working with professionals in bad places. Once the shape of danger was real, nobody needed drama to understand it. Blue lights from the airport operations truck appeared within minutes, followed by airport police in a cruiser and the deputy airfield manager in a jacket thrown over office clothes. Reuben pointed through the fence. They saw the backpack, the shoe, the bobcat still sitting by the chain link as if none of the arriving humans had yet solved the actual problem. The airport police sergeant, Mina Doyle, took one look and ordered an immediate perimeter hold on that section of airfield. The first commuter arrival was still 20 minutes out, but on airports 20 minutes is both forever and no time at all. "Any sign of a breach?" she asked. Reuben scanned the fence line. Then he saw it. 30 feet north of the bobcat, behind a stand of wind-bent grass, the bottom run of the chain link had been pushed upward where an old drainage repair patch met the permanent fencing. Not enough for an adult, plenty for a child. Mina swore once, short and hard. The bag was inside, the shoe was inside, and somewhere, unless the morning was about to become much worse, the child who had worn it was inside too. The bobcat moved again. It stood, turned away from the backpack, and stared farther out toward the runway light line. Reuben followed the direction. At first there was nothing but fog and the blue-white glow of approach lights receding into mist. Then a flicker, a shadow low to the ground between two light stanchions, and after it, movement. Not running, not walking properly, crawling. Reuben's entire body surged forward against the fence before sense checked him. "There!" he shouted. "There!" Mina saw it next. Then everyone did. A small shape in a pale jacket, half obscured by fog and grass, moving in awful little bursts along the gravel shoulder toward the runway lights. A child, alive. The airfield became a different place instantly. Ops halted all non-essential ground movement on the east sector. A TC was notified there was a person inside the perimeter near runway. 2 approach lights. Airport police dispatched 2 units through the nearest secured access gate. Fire rescue was alerted. The next inbound was held farther out. Ground crews diverted like blood away from a wound. And through all of it, the bobcat remained at the fence. Not agitated now, not pacing, just fixed on the same line of sight toward the child. Reuben had the irrational thought that it was waiting to see whether the larger creatures with radios in trucks would finally do the obvious thing. Airport police got to the child first by driving the inner service road parallel and then cutting across the gravel shoulder with hazards flashing. Even from behind the fence, Reuben could see the kid flinch at the sudden movement, try to scramble away and fail because one leg wasn't working right. The officers went low immediately, hands visible, voices careful. No sudden grabs, no shouted authority. Just the quiet, practical tone used for injured children and frightened animals. One officer took off her jacket and wrapped it around the child before lifting. The child clung to her like someone who had long ago used up all available defiance. A medic team met them at the service gate. By then, the first thread of sunrise had finally reached the low clouds, turning the whole airfield silver blue. The child was a girl around 6 or 7, mud on both knees, one sock soaked through, one ankle swollen. No catastrophic visible trauma. Cold, exhausted, and scared into a kind of rigid silence. The blue backpack belonged to her. The pink-soled shoe, too. When the medic checked her name band on the inside of the bag pocket and Mina ran it through county channels, the pieces locked together hard enough to make everyone in the operations lane go quiet. Emma Grayson, 6 years old, reported missing at 11:18 p.m., last seen at the motel strip near the airport frontage road. Ruben actually closed his eyes. He knew those motels. Every airport worker did. Families stranded by cancellations, truckers, divorced handoffs, people trying to disappear in plain sight for one night at a time. The details came slower from the child because fear and cold had worn her thin, but the outline was terrible enough without embellishment. She had been staying with her mother at one of the airport motels after a late bus transfer. Something happened in the room after dark involving the mother's boyfriend and shouting and broken glass. Emma ran. She ran farther than she understood, toward the brightest light she could see. She crawled under the damaged fence when she couldn't get through the gate. She lost her shoe and backpack trying to cross the rough gravel inside the perimeter. Then she kept moving because the giant open dark of the airfield terrified her almost as much as what she'd run from. No one at the motel knew where she'd gone. The county search had spread toward the frontage road, fast food strip, drainage canal, and bus stop corridor. No one had thought to look beyond the airport fence. No one except, perhaps, the bobcat. Ruben looked toward the chain link. The animal still sat there, ears pricked, facing the place where the child had first appeared out of the fog. One of the officers beside him followed his gaze. "That thing's been here the whole time?" Ruben nodded once. The officer let out a breath. "I'll be damned." That phrase, Ruben noticed later, was the most common human response that morning. Emma was loaded into the ambulance conscious, wrapped in silver thermal blankets, clutching one medic's wrist so tightly the woman had to kneel beside the stretcher rather than try to pry free. Airport police split between the gate scene and the motel response. Airfield operations began the careful process of turning a restricted rescue zone back into a functioning runway environment. ATC restarted its choreography. Metal birds resumed their schedules. Trucks rolled. Radios moved from emergency tone to clipped debrief. And still the bobcat remained by the fence until the ambulance doors closed. Only then did it rise. It looked once toward the departing vehicle, once toward the backpack still lying in the gravel, then toward Ruben. That was the part he would later refuse to overstate, because the truth was strange enough without decorating it. The animal didn't nod. It didn't pose. It didn't become magical just because people wanted meaning. It just held still for one heartbeat. Then it turned, trotted along the perimeter ditch, slipped under a culvert fence gap no one had noticed before, and vanished into the weed-grown drainage strip behind the hangars without a sound. Gone. The morning kept going because airports do that. That was one of the ugliest and most useful truths Ruben knew about his job. Even when the ground very nearly becomes a crime scene or a grave, flights still need dispatching, pavement still needs checking, and reports still need writing. By 7:30, the first passengers were stepping into the terminal, unaware that a missing 6-year-old had been found alive near the runway lights because a wildcat refused to leave one section of perimeter fence. By noon, though, the story had escaped its paperwork. Airport workers told it in service corridors. Police told it in shorter versions with fewer adjectives. A baggage loader told it to a fuel truck driver, who told it to a city bus operator, and by late afternoon, it had spread across half the county in the usual cracked reflections of itself. A bobcat at the airport fence, a child's backpack near the runway lights, a little girl crawling through the fog, the mechanic who looked where the cat kept looking. The news predictably got hold of it by evening and made it either too sentimental or too theatrical, depending on the channel. Ruben hated both versions. The truth was enough. The bobcat stayed by the fence. Then he saw the backpack. Then they found the child. That was the sequence. That was the thing. 3 days later, before the first departure wave, Ruben drove the perimeter service lane on routine fence inspection and slowed automatically at the same stretch where the old drainage patch had failed. Maintenance crews had already reinforced the mesh, added temporary barriers, and flagged the whole section for full replacement. The gravel shoulder had been raked. The backpack and the shoe were long gone. The airfield looked offensively ordinary again. Then movement near the ditch caught his eye. A bobcat stood half concealed in the grass beyond the culvert line. Maybe the same one. Maybe not. Young, pale. entirely visible for one clean second in the wash of the truck headlights. It looked toward the fence, then toward him, then slipped into the drainage grass and vanished like water poured into shadow. Reuben sat there a moment with both hands on the steering wheel. Then he got out, walked the fence line himself, and only after that moved on to the next section.